Trapped in a barn, a 10-year-old girl's nightmare at the hands of her stepmother, a father's blind love, a daughter's desperate fight. Would he see the truth before it was too late? At just 10 years old, Emily Caldwell was left alone with a woman she knew she couldn't trust. Her father, blinded by love, refused to see the truth. Vanessa was not who she claimed to be. Locked away in a cold stable, dark barn with no food, no water, and no way out, Emily was running out of time. Would her father return before it was too late? Or would Vanessa get away with everything, including his fortune? Dear family, which country are you watching from? Leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe to support us. Now let's get started. There was a time when Willowbrook Manor was filled with love. That time was gone. A bitter wind howled through the towering oaks that lined the Caldwell estate, rattling the old windows like restless spirits. Inside, 10-year-old Emily Caldwell pressed her small hands against the glass, staring into the darkness beyond the garden. The once grand manor, which had been warm with laughter and the scent of fresh-baked apple pie, now felt cold and unfamiliar. Her mother was gone, and in her place there was Vanessa. Vanessa Mitchell, the woman who had arrived like a whisper on the wind and settled into their lives before Emily even had time to catch her breath. She was beautiful, with sleek auburn hair and eyes that sparkled when she laughed. Around Emily's father, Richard Caldwell, she was the perfect companion. Charming, gracious, always knowing the right thing to say. But when Richard wasn't looking, that sparkle in her eyes faded into something else. Something empty. Something calculating. Emily had tried to like Vanessa. She had tried to believe that her father had found happiness again after losing her mother. But deep down she knew Vanessa didn't belong here. And worse, Vanessa didn't want Emily here. It had started with small things. At first, it was just the way Vanessa's fingers tensed ever so slightly when Emily spoke at the dinner table, or how her smile never quite reached her eyes when Richard asked about Emily's day. Then came the subtle dismissals, the gentle but firm hand on Richard's arm when Emily wanted to spend time with him, the "Oh, she's fine, Richard, let her play," always brushing her aside. And then there were the whispers. Emily had woken late one night to the soft murmur of Vanessa's voice outside her door. Peeking through the gap, she saw Vanessa standing in the dimly lit hallway, her back turned, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I've seen the financials. No, he's not paying attention. He trusts me completely. It won't be long now." Emily's breath hitched. The voice was low, smooth, but not the voice of a loving fiancé. It was the voice of someone making a deal, but Richard wouldn't listen. "Sweetheart, Vanessa cares about you. She's trying her best," he had said gently, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. "You're still adjusting. It's been hard on all of us." This wasn't just about adjusting. Emily had wanted to scream, to make him see, but instead, she had only nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Because what else could she do? Her father, the man she had always trusted, was blinded by Vanessa's charm, and Emily was left alone in a house that no longer felt like home. That night, as she lay awake in bed, Emily stared at the framed photograph on her nightstand. Her mother's warm smile looked back at her, frozen in time. She traced her fingers over the glass. "Mom, if you were here, you'd know what to do." A sharp click echoed in the hallway outside her room. Emily froze. Soft footsteps, too light to be her father's, moved down the corridor, pausing for just a moment outside her door. The brass handle twitched, then silence. Emily held her breath until the footsteps faded away. Only then did she let the fear sink in. Vanessa wasn't just unfriendly, she wasn't just cold. She was watching her, and Emily was running out of time. The rain came down in thick, steady sheets, turning the Willowbrook gardens into a sea of mud. The house, usually so grand and imposing, felt even heavier that night, pressing down on Emily Caldwell's small frame as she clung to her father's sleeve. "Please, Daddy." Her voice wavered, her 10-year-old hands trembling as they gripped the fabric of Richard Caldwell's coat. "She's not who she says she is. Please don't leave me alone with her." Her father sighed, rubbing his temples as if warding off an oncoming headache. "Emily, sweetheart, we've talked about this." His voice was gentle, but distant. No, we haven't, she insisted, her desperation sharpening. You keep saying I'll get used to her, but I won't. I hear her whispering on the phone at night. I see the way she looks at me when you're not around. Richard knelt down, placing warm but tired hands on her shoulders. Emily, I know this has been hard. Your mother? His voice caught for just a second. He cleared his throat and tried again. Losing her changed everything, for both of us. Emily's heart squeezed. She wanted to throw her arms around him to pull him back from whatever fog Vanessa had wrapped around him. But then came the words that crushed her. Vanessa's trying. I just need you to try too. Try? Emily's fingers slipped from his sleeve, her arms falling limply to her sides. How could he not see it? How could he not feel what she felt? A presence loomed behind them. Vanessa. Everything okay? She asked sweetly, her voice carrying just the right amount of concern. Emily didn't turn to face her. She could feel Vanessa's eyes drilling into her back, cold, amused, waiting. Richard hesitated for only a moment before standing. Yes, we're fine. Just a little father-daughter talk. He turned to Vanessa and gave her a weary smile. Long day of travel tomorrow. I think it's best if we all get some rest. Emily's stomach dropped. That was it. She had lost. Vanessa had won. That night, Emily sat on the edge of her bed, her hands clenched into fists. A storm raged outside, lightning casting jagged shadows across the walls. Every instinct in her body screamed that something terrible was coming. A quiet click made her blood run cold. Her bedroom door. Emily didn't move, didn't even breathe, as the door creaked open just an inch. Through the sliver of space, Vanessa's face appeared. She said nothing. She didn't have to. A slow, deliberate smirk curled Vanessa's lips. The kind of smile that said, "You lost, little girl, and now you're mine." Then, as quickly as she had appeared, Vanessa slipped away, closing the door without a sound. Emily sat frozen long after the footsteps faded down the hall. Her father was leaving in the morning, and when he was gone, there would be no one left to protect her. The morning air hung heavy with mist, curling around the grand pillars of Willowbrook Manor like ghostly fingers. A thin gray veil stretched across the sky, swallowing the weak sunlight before it could reach the earth. It was as if the house itself knew what was coming. Emily stood on the stone terrace, her small hands clenched into fists at her sides as she watched her father's car roll slowly down the long gravel driveway. The tires crunched over the damp ground, the rhythmic sound growing fainter with each passing second. She didn't cry, didn't call out. It wouldn't matter if she did. He was leaving. And this time, he had chosen to believe in a lie rather than in her. Beside her, Vanessa stood perfectly still, waving enthusiastically. One arm draped around Emily's shoulders in an almost affectionate gesture. But her grip was far too tight. Emily tried to shift away, but the fingers digging into her shoulder tightened like a vice. The moment the car disappeared beyond the curve in the road, Vanessa's entire body shifted. Gone was the warm, affectionate fiancée. Gone was the doting, soon-to-be stepmother. What remained was something sharp-edged, cold, and predatory. Her fingers squeezed Emily's shoulder hard enough to make the girl gasp. "Your daddy isn't here to save you anymore, sweetheart," Vanessa whispered, her voice smooth as silk, but dripping with venom. Emily felt her breath hitch. Vanessa leaned in closer, her lips barely an inch from Emily's ear. "And trust me, little girl, I have big plans for us." A shiver ran down Emily's spine, her small body going rigid under Vanessa's touch. There was no need for pretense now. No need for fake kindness, for carefully measured words or honeyed smiles. Her father was gone, and she was trapped with a woman who no longer saw her as a child, but as an obstacle. The realization hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. She had thought she was afraid before, but she hadn't known fear until now, because now there was no one left to see, no one left to listen, and worst of all, no one left to believe her. The halls of Willowbrook Manor were eerily quiet that night, the kind of silence that made the grand house feel emptier than it had any right to be. The chandeliers above cast long, spindly shadows along the walls, their golden glow doing little to warm the chilling air. Emily had spent most of the evening locked in her room, the weight of Vanessa's earlier words pressing down on her like a stone. She wanted to cry, But she wouldn't give Vanessa the satisfaction. Instead, she lay still in bed, listening. And then she heard it. The faint hum of a computer. The soft click-clack of fingers gliding over a keyboard. Emily sat up, heart hammering. She knew exactly where those sounds were coming from. Silently, she slipped out of bed, careful to avoid the floorboards that creaked under too much pressure. The hallway was dim, the only light spilling from the slightly cracked door of her father's private office. Vanessa wasn't supposed to be in there. Holding her breath, Emily crept forward, pressing her small frame against the wall. She peeked through the opening, her pulse racing. There she was. Vanessa sat at her father's mahogany desk, her manicured nails tapping impatiently on the keyboard. The glow from the computer screen illuminated her face in an unnatural blue hue, making her sharp features look even colder, crueler. Emily squinted at the screen, barely able to make out the numbers flashing across it. Large amounts of money, thousands upon thousands of dollars, vanishing from her father's accounts and reappearing in ones with names she didn't recognize. A low, satisfied chuckle left Vanessa's lips as she picked up her phone. "You should see how easy this is, Lydia," she murmured, her voice dripping with amusement. "Richard was completely blind to this. He trusted me completely. Too busy drowning in work and guilt to realize what was happening right under his nose." Emily felt her stomach drop. This wasn't just a bad stepmother. This was something worse. Vanessa was stealing from her father, right now, in real time, draining everything he had worked his entire life for. Emily swallowed hard, pressing herself further into the shadows. If Vanessa so much as glanced at the doorway, she would see her. Vanessa's voice turned syrupy. "A couple more weeks and I'll have what I need. Then it's goodbye, Willowbrook. Goodbye, Richard. And that little brat? She won't be a problem much longer." A sickening wave of dread curled around Emily's ribs like a vice. This wasn't about money. This wasn't just some gold-digging scheme. This was a criminal plot, and Emily was standing right in the middle of it. Emily couldn't sleep. Not after what she had seen, not after what she had heard. She lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing like a runaway train. Vanessa was stealing from her father. That much was clear. But the last thing she had said, the way her voice had dripped with quiet menace when she mentioned Emily not being a problem much longer, that was what truly terrified her. She needed help. She needed Mrs. Thompson. Slipping silently out of bed, Emily tiptoed down the hall toward the small servants' quarters near the back of the house. The floor was cold beneath her bare feet, and every creak in the wooden panels beneath her felt too loud, too dangerous. If Vanessa caught her wandering the house this late, there was no telling what she would do. Reaching Mrs. Thompson's door, Emily hesitated only a second before knocking softly, urgently. A moment later, the door cracked open, revealing Mrs. Thompson's kind but weary face. Her hair, usually pinned neatly back during the day, was loose around her shoulders, and her nightgown was slightly wrinkled, as if she had only just drifted off to sleep. "Emily," she whispered, concern instantly etching across her face. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Emily didn't wait. She threw herself forward, wrapping her arms around the woman's waist, burying her face in the soft fabric of her nightgown. "It's Vanessa," she choked out. "She's lying. She's stealing. She's going to hurt us." Mrs. Thompson stiffened. For a long moment, she said nothing, simply holding Emily close, one hand smoothing over the child's hair in a comforting rhythm. Then gently but firmly, she led Emily inside, closing the door behind them. "Tell me everything," she said. And so Emily did. She told her everything. The stolen money, the whispered phone calls, the cruel, triumphant smirk Vanessa had given her once her father was gone. The way she had laughed over the phone about Richard being too distracted to notice. The way she had boasted that she would be gone in just a few weeks. When Emily finished, Mrs. Thompson's face had lost all its warmth. Her expression was grave, unreadable. She let out a long, slow breath before kneeling so that she was eye level with Emily. "What you're telling me, sweetheart," she said carefully, "that's a serious accusation. Your father, he's not going to believe it just because we say so." Emily's heart clenched. "But it's true." "I know," Mrs. Thompson assured her, squeezing her hands. "But Vanessa's smart, clever. She's wrapped your father around her little finger. If we confront her without proof, she'll twist everything. Make him think we're just trying to drive a wedge between them. Emily swallowed hard. She could see it happening, just as Mrs. Thompson described. Her father wasn't ready to hear the truth. He was too lost in grief, too desperate for love. He would side with Vanessa. Emily's fingernails dug into her palms. She wouldn't let that happen. She couldn't. A memory flashed in her mind. A small, red voice recorder. She had gotten it for Christmas. A gift from her father. She had played with it a few times, recording herself singing along to the radio. But then it had been tossed aside with the rest of her toys. But it still worked. And if she could record Vanessa admitting everything, her pulse quickened. Her hands trembled, not with fear this time, but with determination. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, voice steadier than she felt, "what if we could get proof? Real proof. Something that my dad couldn't ignore?" Mrs. Thompson studied her for a long moment, and then finally a flicker of something, hope, resolve, entered her tired eyes. "What are you thinking, sweetheart?" Emily straightened her spine. "I'm going to record her," she whispered. "I'm going to make her confess." The risk was immense, but she had no other choice. The moment had to be perfect. Emily's heart pounded as she tiptoed through the dimly lit hallway of Willowbrook Manor, her small fingers clutching the smooth surface of her toy voice recorder. The old house creaked with every step, as if the walls themselves were warning her to turn back. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. Vanessa had already stolen so much from her father. His trust, his money, his happiness. Emily wasn't going to let her steal everything. Tonight she would catch her in the act. She stopped just outside Vanessa's study. The door was slightly ajar, the warm glow of the desk lamp spilling into the hallway. Emily's breath caught as she peeked inside. Vanessa was there, sitting in Richard's chair, legs casually crossed, a glass of deep amber whiskey in her hand. Her expression was sharp, predatory, her usual sweetness nowhere to be found. The phone was pressed to her ear, and her lips curved into a smirk as she spoke. Emily knew she had only seconds before Vanessa started talking about her crimes. She had to move. Now with quiet precision, she crouched low, slipping into the room. She held her breath as she approached the large oak desk, her small hands steady despite the rush of adrenaline in her veins. She placed the recorder behind a stack of paperwork, just out of sight, but close enough to pick up every word. Then before Vanessa could sense another presence in the room, Emily darted away, slipping into the closet that stood in the corner. Darkness swallowed her. The only light was the narrow crack between the closet doors, where she could still see Vanessa's silhouette at the desk. Emily pressed herself against the back wall, barely breathing. And then, Vanessa started talking. "We're almost done," Vanessa whispered into the phone, swirling her wine glass in her hand. "That fool still has no idea. Over $1 million has already been transferred, and I'll move the rest in a few days. After that, I'm gone." Emily's stomach twisted. She had her. She had proof, but she had to wait. Let her say more. "Richard?" Vanessa laughed, low and full of mockery. "He still thinks I'm his angel. He won't know what hit him. By the time he realizes he's been drained dry, I'll be sipping cocktails in Fiji under a brand new name." Emily's fist clenched. She knew it. She had known from the start. And now she had recorded it all. All she had to do was get the recorder and get out. She braced herself, waiting for the right moment. The second Vanessa ended the call, she would slip out, grab the recorder, and a tickle started in her nose. Emily's eyes widened in horror. "Number not now." She pressed a hand against her face, trying to stop it. But it was useless. She sneezed, loud, sharp, echoing through the room like a gunshot. Vanessa froze. The silence was suffocating. Then very slowly, Vanessa set down her glass. Her head turned, her sharp eyes sweeping across the room. The moment the sneeze escaped Emily's lips, she froze in horror. The office fell deathly silent. For a second, there was nothing but the hum of the old chandelier overhead, the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Then, the sharp screech of a chair being pushed back. Vanessa's voice, low and deadly. "Who's there?" Emily pressed herself against the back of the closet, her small hands clamped over her mouth, her chest rising and falling in frantic, silent gasps. She heard heels clicking against the hardwood floor, moving toward her hiding spot. Closer, closer. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Then, the door was ripped open. Light flooded the tiny space, blinding her for a moment. Before Emily could react, Vanessa's hand shot out, grabbing her by the wrist and yanking her forward. "Well, well, well." Vanessa's voice dripped with mock amusement. "What do we have here?" Emily squirmed, twisting, kicking, trying to break free. But Vanessa's grip was like iron. Her eyes burned with fury, her smile razor sharp. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" she whispered, leaning in close, her breath cold against Emily's cheek. "Spying on me, sneaking around like a little rat. But you just made a very, very bad mistake." Emily's heart thundered in her chest. She had to act fast. With all her strength, she jerked her arm as hard as she could, twisting her small body out of Vanessa's grasp. For one glorious second, she was free. Emily darted past Vanessa, sprinting toward the desk, toward the tiny recorder still hidden behind a stack of papers. "Oh, no, you don't!" Vanessa lunged after her. But Emily was small and fast. She grabbed the recorder, clutching it against her chest, and ran like her life depended on it. The hallway was long and dark, her feet slapping against the cold marble floor. Behind her, Vanessa's furious footsteps closed in. "Emily!" she shrieked. "Come back here, you little brat!" Panic seized Emily's throat. Vanessa was gaining on her. She had seconds to hide the recorder. Her eyes scanned frantically. A large potted plant sat at the corner of the hallway. Without thinking, she threw the recorder into the thick leaves, praying it would stay hidden. Then she kept running. She didn't get far. A sharp tug on her hair sent her sprawling forward. Emily hit the ground hard, her breath knocked from her lungs. Before she could scramble back up, Vanessa was on her. With a terrifying calmness, Vanessa knelt beside her, grabbing her wrist so tight that Emily whimpered. Her eyes, once so charming and warm, were now as cold as steel. "You just made the worst mistake of your life, sweetheart," she whispered. Emily's stomach dropped. Vanessa wasn't just angry. She was furious, dangerous. Emily was in trouble, real trouble. And as Vanessa's grip tightened, dragging her to her feet, Emily realized one thing. She wasn't getting away this time. The night air was cold and sharp, biting against Emily's skin as Vanessa dragged her toward the barn. The towering wooden structure loomed in the darkness, its silhouette stark against the moonlit sky. Emily kicked, struggled, twisted in Vanessa's grip, but it was useless. The woman's fingers dug into her arm, her manicured nails sharp like claws. "Please," Emily gasped, her voice raw from screaming. "Please, let me go." Vanessa didn't even look at her. Her expression was calm, controlled, but her grip tightened like a steel trap. "You brought this on yourself, darling," she said smoothly. "If you had just stayed out of my business, none of this would be necessary." With one forceful shove, she pushed open the heavy barn door. The scent of damp wood and hay filled the air, the silence inside suffocating. Emily's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Vanessa yanked her toward the back, where an old storage room stood, its thick wooden door reinforced with iron bolts. Emily's eyes darted around frantically. The barn was empty. No stable hands, no workers, no one to help her. "Please," Emily begged again, her voice breaking. "I won't tell anyone, I swear. Just let me go." Vanessa let out a low, amused chuckle. "Oh, sweetheart, you're not going anywhere." Then, before Emily could react, Vanessa threw open the storage room door and shoved her inside. Emily stumbled, falling hard onto the cold dirt floor. She scrambled to her feet, rushing toward the exit, but slam! The door slammed shut, the heavy bolts clicking into place. Emily pounded her fists against the wood, her breath coming in frantic gasps. "Let me out!" she screamed, her tiny hands beating against the door. "Please!" From the other side, Vanessa's voice was mockingly sweet. "You'll be just fine, Emily. A little time alone will teach you not to meddle in grown-up affairs." Emily pressed her ear to the door, her chest heaving with panic. She could hear Vanessa's footsteps retreating, her heels clicking against the barn floor. Then, silence. Emily was alone. The room was small, cramped, and dark, with no windows, no light, and no way out. She felt along the walls, her fingers tracing over rough wooden planks and cold metal barrels. There was nothing useful. No tools, no loose boards, no way to escape. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but there was no food, no water, nothing. A cold dread settled into her bones as the full weight of her situation crashed down on her. She's going to leave me here. The thought made her sink to the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to cry. Not yet. She had to think, had to find a way out. But as the hours dragged on, exhaustion and fear wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. That night, with her stomach aching from hunger and her throat raw from screaming, Emily curled up on the cold dirt floor. Tears silently spilled down her cheeks. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling, "please come home." But the only answer was the hollow silence of the barn and the dreadful thought that maybe he never would. The dining room felt too quiet, too still. Mrs. Thompson stood by the grand oak table, staring at the untouched plate of food. Emily's chair, empty. Her hands tightened around the dish towel she was holding. Something felt wrong. Emily never missed dinner, not once in all the years she had been caring for her. Even after Mrs. Caldwell's passing, even in the worst of times, Emily always showed up for dinner. Tonight she was nowhere to be found. Mrs. Thompson's gaze flicked toward the grand staircase, half expecting to see Emily's small frame appear, rubbing sleepy eyes and mumbling about losing track of time. But nothing. Instead, Vanessa waltzed in, effortlessly elegant, sipping from a glass of wine, her red lips curled into an easy smile. "Ah, dinner smells lovely, Mrs. Thompson." She set her glass down and picked at the roasted chicken with deliberate nonchalance. The housekeeper didn't return the smile. "Where's Emily?" Mrs. Thompson asked, her voice steady but firm. Vanessa gave a little laugh, waving a hand as if brushing off a minor inconvenience. "Oh, didn't I mention? She went on a little trip with some friends, a weekend getaway. I thought it'd be good for her." Mrs. Thompson's stomach tightened. "A weekend getaway?" she repeated slowly. "With who?" Vanessa took another sip of wine, unfazed. "The Tanners. You know, their daughter and Emily get along so well. They invited her this morning, and she was so excited. I didn't want to say no." Mrs. Thompson's sharp eyes stayed on Vanessa's face. Something didn't add up. "That's odd," she said, her voice deceptively calm. "I just spoke to Mrs. Tanner this afternoon. She didn't mention anything about Emily going away with them." For the briefest second, Vanessa's mask slipped. Her smile froze, her fingers gripping the stem of her wine glass just a little too tightly. But then, just as quickly, she recovered. "Must have been a last-minute plan," she said lightly, swirling the wine in her glass. "Emily asked. I said yes. No big deal." No big deal, except it was. A heavy unease settled over Mrs. Thompson as she paced the grand halls of Willowbrook Manor. The ticking of the old grandfather clock in the foyer felt unbearably loud, marking every agonizing second that passed without a sign of Emily. Something was terribly wrong. She could feel it deep in her bones. Vanessa's explanation had been smooth, almost too perfect. Emily went on a weekend trip with friends, but Mrs. Thompson had cared for that little girl since birth. Emily never left without saying goodbye. With trembling fingers, she picked up the phone and called the neighbors. Maybe she really was at a friend's house, but one by one the answers came back the same. "No, we haven't seen Emily today. She wasn't at the park this morning. I thought she was home with you." Mrs. Thompson's heart pounded. Emily was nowhere. And that left only one terrifying conclusion. Vanessa had lied. Her hands shook as she reached for the phone again, this time dialing an international number. It rang once, twice. "Hello?" Richard's deep voice was calm, unsuspecting. He had no idea that his world was about to be turned upside down. "Mr. Caldwell," she gasped, "you need to come home. Now Emily is missing. Vanessa said she was with friends, but I checked everywhere. She's not here, and I don't trust Vanessa." A long silence. Then Richard spoke, his voice slow, careful. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Yes," she cried. "Something is terribly wrong. I should have noticed sooner, but now I'll be on the next flight home." Mrs. Thompson hung up, her pulse still racing. But the moment she set the phone down, another realization struck her. She couldn't just wait. She had to find Emily. Throwing a shawl over her shoulders, she grabbed a flashlight and rushed outside. The night air cold against her skin. Her feet crunched against the gravel as she hurried around the estate, checking every corner, every hidden place Emily might be. "Emily!" she called, her voice growing hoarse with panic. She searched the garden, even the tool shed. Nothing. A terrible dread settled in her stomach. Where was she, and what had Vanessa done? Emily's fingers trembled as she pried at the splintering wood. Her once bright and determined spirit was waning, beaten down by hunger, exhaustion, and the cold that had seeped into her bones. It had been too long. Her stomach ached from emptiness, her throat raw from whispering, desperate calls for help that no one heard. The small storage room in the barn, her prison, reeked of dust, mold, and loneliness. The air was thick and stale, pressing in on her like an invisible weight. But she couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. With sheer determination, Emily clawed at the old wooden planks. Her small hands, already sore and bruised, pulled and twisted at a particularly loose board near the bottom of the wall. It creaked, shifted. Hope flickered inside her. Then, voices outside. Emily froze, her heart hammering so loudly she was sure they would hear it. She crawled closer to the gap in the boards, pressing her ear against the cold, rough wood. Vanessa's voice drifted through the crisp night air. Low, sharp, urgent. "Richard is on his way home. We need to be gone before he gets here." Emily's blood turned to ice. Lydia, Vanessa's accomplice, responded in a hushed, worried tone. "And the kid?" A pause, a beat of silence where the world seemed to stop spinning. Then Vanessa's voice, casual, cruel, chilling. "By the time they find her, we'll be long gone." Emily's lungs seized. Her fingers dug into the dirt beneath her, trying to anchor herself. They were leaving. They were going to disappear. And they didn't care if she was ever found. Panic crashed over her in waves. She had no time left. Emily's breath came in shallow gasps as she scrambled backward, refocusing on the wooden board. She pushed, pulled, ripped at it with everything she had. The wood groaned in protest, but she kept going, tears of desperation slipping down her dirt-streaked face. If she didn't get out now, she might never get out at all. The moment the wooden board gave way with a loud, splintering crack, Emily didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, squeezing through the narrow opening, the jagged edges scraping against her arms. Cold night air rushed into her lungs, sharp and fresh compared to the suffocating dust of the storage room. For a split second, she was free. But then, "Hey!" A voice, Vanessa's. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Bare feet pounding against the dirt, she bolted toward the estate, toward the warm golden lights glowing from the house in the distance, toward safety. "Stop right there!" Vanessa's scream was pure rage, her heels clicking violently against the pavement as she tore down the steps of the house. Emily ran harder, her breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. The world blurred around her. Just the night, the wind, the sound of Vanessa gaining on her. Her eyes darted wildly. Where was Mrs. Thompson? If she could just get to her, everything would be okay. The porch light flickered in the distance. The back door was slightly ajar. Just a little farther. A hand snatched her wrist. Emily screamed. Vanessa's fingernails dug into her skin, yanking her backward with terrifying force. "Oh, no, you don't, you little brat!" Vanessa snarled, her grip like iron. Emily twisted, kicked, fought, but Vanessa was too strong. She yanked Emily backward toward the stable. The house, the safety, Mrs. Thompson, they were so close. But now so was danger. The roar of an approaching car cut through the night like a sudden clap of thunder. Emily heard it first. Her wide, tear-filled eyes flicked toward the long driveway, where a sleek black car sped through the iron gates of Willowbrook Manor. Its tires screeched as it skidded to a stop, sending gravel flying in every direction. For a second, everything froze. Then the driver's side door burst open. A tall figure stepped out into the floodlights of the estate, broad-shouldered, his coat whipping in the wind. Richard. Emily's breath hitched in her throat. Her father's face, so often softened by exhaustion and grief, was now something entirely different. Gone was the man who had dismissed her fears. Gone was the man who had been blinded by love. In his place stood someone fierce, unwavering, a father who had just discovered he had been deceived. Vanessa's grip tightened around Emily's arm, her nails biting into the girl's skin. "Go quickly," she hissed, yanking Emily toward the barn. "Get your hands off my daughter." Richard's voice thundered through the night, sharp, commanding, filled with a rage Emily had never heard before. Vanessa stiffened. For the first time, her confidence wavered. Richard was stalking toward them now, his steps deliberate, his fury undeniable. Emily felt Vanessa's grip tremble, just slightly, but Vanessa was nothing if not a survivor. In a flash, she yanked Emily in front of her, using the girl like a shield. "Richard," she gasped, her voice trembling with manufactured shock. "Thank God you're here." Emily ran off into the night. "I was just bringing her back." She was scared, confused. "Let her go." Richard's voice was low, deadly. Emily felt it. The moment Vanessa realized her usual tricks wouldn't work. Richard wasn't buying it. Not this time. Not anymore. The night air hung heavy, thick with tension. Vanessa didn't move. Neither did Richard. A battle raged in the silence between them, Emily still trapped in Vanessa's grasp, her small frame held hostage in the woman's desperate attempt to salvage control. Then, a sound cut through the night, a click, a faint whir. And then, Vanessa's own voice, cool, calculated, dripping with arrogance. "We're almost done. That fool still has no idea. Over $1 million has already been transferred, and I'll move the rest in a few days. After that, I'm gone." The recorder, Emily's proof, still wedged inside the potted plant where she had hidden it. Mrs. Thompson stood by the estate steps, holding the toy up for all to hear, her face carved with grim determination. Vanessa's breath hitched, her fingers twitched on Emily's arm, and the girl wrenched free, stumbling toward her father. Richard caught her, his arms, strong and steady, wrapped around Emily protectively, anchoring her. He never took his eyes off Vanessa. The recording continued, word for word, moment for moment, revealing the entire sinister truth. "Richard? He still thinks I'm his angel. He won't know what hit him. By the time he realizes he's been drained dry, I'll be sipping cocktails in Fiji under a brand new name." The evidence was irrefutable. The woman who had spent months manipulating, deceiving, and stealing had just incriminated herself, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Vanessa snapped. "She's lying!" she shrieked, her voice wild, desperate, unraveling. Her eyes darted frantically between Richard and Mrs. Thompson, searching for a lifeline, a way out. She made that up. That could be anyone's voice. You know this child has always hated me. Richard stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, his entire body shaking, not with fear but with rage. "Then why," he said, his voice dangerously low, "did I just hear your voice confessing to everything?" Vanessa froze, and then the distant wail of sirens. Red and blue lights flashed against the estate walls. The police cars skidded to a stop at the gates, officers spilling out, their radios crackling. Vanessa spun around, eyes wide. "Richard," she gasped, voice trembling, a last, desperate performance. "Please, you have to believe me. The officers rushed forward. Hands grabbed Vanessa's arms. Cold steel snapped around her wrists. Her face turned ghostly pale. The clink of handcuffs echoed through the night. It was over. The facade was gone. The lies were exposed. Vanessa Mitchell, the woman who had nearly torn apart an entire family, was finally facing justice. As the officers escorted her toward the waiting squad car, she thrashed, shouting, grasping for any last bit of control. "You'll regret this, Richard. I could have given you everything. You're a fool." She was shoved inside. The car door slammed shut. Silence fell. Richard stood motionless, his grip firm around Emily's small shoulders, holding her close. He had been blind for so long, But now at last, he saw everything clearly. The morning sun stretched across Willowbrook Manor, casting golden light over the vast green fields. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming wildflowers. It was the kind of morning that made everything feel possible again, a stark contrast to the darkness that had loomed over the estate for so long. Near the garden, Emily's laughter rang out, a sound that had been absent for too many months. She raced across the grass, her golden hair catching the sunlight, a playful glint in her eyes. She spun in circles, arms stretched wide, as if embracing her newfound freedom. Her small hands clutched a wooden stick, pretending it was a sword, battling an imaginary foe. A few weeks ago, she had been locked away in fear, her voice silenced, her spirit nearly broken. But now she was alive again. Richard watched her from the porch, his hands clasped together, his face unreadable. Mrs. Thompson stood beside him, a knowing warmth in her expression as she followed his gaze toward the child. "She's laughing," Richard murmured, almost as if he didn't believe it himself. Mrs. Thompson nodded. "Yes, and she's happy." A long silence settled between them, thick with unspoken regrets. "I failed her," Richard finally admitted, his voice heavy. "I should have listened. I should have seen the truth sooner." The weight of his words seemed to anchor him in place. He had spent countless nights replaying the past in his mind, remembering every dismissed warning, every moment he had ignored his own daughter's fear. It had been his own blindness, his own need to fill the void left by his wife's passing, that had almost destroyed everything. Mrs. Thompson placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "What matters is that you're here now," she said softly. Richard turned to look at her, searching for judgment in her face, but he found none. Only understanding, only forgiveness. He exhaled deeply, his eyes returning to Emily. The past couldn't be changed, but the future? That at least was still in his hands. With slow, deliberate steps, he walked down toward his daughter, his shadow stretching long over the grass. Emily turned, spotting him, her face lighting up. "Daddy, want to help me defeat the evil sorceress?" she asked, holding out a second wooden stick, inviting him into her game. Richard hesitated just for a second. Then with a small, genuine smile, he took the stick from her outstretched hand. "Of course," he said, crouching beside her, "but you'll have to show me how." Emily grinned, and in that moment, something shifted between them. The wounds of the past were still there, but they weren't bleeding anymore. And for the first time in a long, long time, Richard felt like he was truly home. The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the sprawling garden of Willowbrook Manor. The air smelled of damp earth and fresh-cut grass, carrying the promise of renewal. Richard knelt beside Emily in the soft soil, sleeves rolled up, dirt streaking his usually pristine hands. In front of them stood a young sapling, its delicate branches reaching toward the sky, swaying gently in the breeze. Emily carefully placed her small hands around the fragile trunk, steadying it as Richard began to scoop earth into the hole they had dug together. "This tree," Richard murmured, pressing the soil down firmly, "will grow strong, just like you." Emily looked up at him, her eyes bright and full of something new, hope. "Just like us," she corrected softly. Richard's heart tightened. He reached over, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Yes," he whispered, "just like us." For too long, he had been lost in grief, blind to the things that truly mattered. He had let his sorrow cloud his judgment, allowed a stranger to slip into their lives and nearly tear them apart. But not anymore. Emily had been the one to see the truth. A child, but wiser than he had been, and he would never again make the mistake of ignoring her. Beside them, Mrs. Thompson stood watching, her hands clasped together, a knowing smile on her face. She had been a silent guardian, a protector when Emily had no one else. Family, Richard realized, wasn't just about blood. It was about loyalty, love, and trust. As he patted the final layer of soil into place, Emily picked up a small watering can and sprinkled water over the sapling's fragile roots. A new beginning, taking root in the very place where deceit had nearly destroyed them. Richard took a deep breath and let it out slowly, feeling lighter than he had in years. "Daddy?" Emily asked, tilting her head. He looked at her, ready to listen. "Do you think Mom would have liked this tree?" A bittersweet smile touched his lips. He glanced toward the sky, where the first evening stars were beginning to appear. "I think she'd love it," he said. Emily nodded as if she already knew the answer. As the sun set behind Willowbrook Manor, casting a golden glow over the newly planted tree, a sense of closure settled over Richard and Emily. But for us, the lesson in their story lingers, a reminder of the choices we make, the voices we choose to hear, and the dangers of misplaced trust. How many times in life have we ignored that quiet warning inside us, dismissed the concern of a loved one, or allowed grief, pride, or fear to cloud our judgment? Richard was not a bad father. He was a broken man, desperately searching for comfort in the wrong place. But comfort without truth is an illusion, and illusions always shatter. Emily's strength was not in physical power, but in her unwavering resolve, in the courage to speak the truth even when no one believed her. And Mrs. Thompson? She was proof that real family is not just about blood. It's about love, about standing firm when someone you care about is in danger, even when it puts you at risk. So ask yourself, have you ever dismissed someone's concerns, only to realize later they were right? Have you ever trusted the wrong person, blinded by what you wanted to believe? And most importantly, when the moment of truth came, did you have the courage to listen? This is not just a story about betrayal and redemption. It is a story about the power of listening, about recognizing that sometimes the ones who love us most are the ones whispering when the world is shouting. What would you have done in Richard's shoes? Would you have seen the warning signs, or would you have made the same mistake? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, if it stirred something deep inside, hit subscribe to join us for more tales that remind us of the lessons life has to teach. Thank you for being part of our storytelling family. Until next time, stay safe, stay wise, and most of all, stay true to the voices that truly matter.